What up, YouTube? What up, YouTube? It's your boy, to Author. Right back at that ass again. Here's another one. I just thought I'd make this quick video, man. Check the scoreboard. Check the scoreboard, man. Home and visitors. That does have a type of symbolic statement, I think, behind it. And some things I just sometimes do. I don't even realize the symbolism behind it, and sometimes it'll hit me later. But it does have reference, man. But just to get straight to the point, man, I wanted to make this video, man, because I was, running my errands today. And, sometimes I'll do certain things and thoughts will cross my mind. And this crossed my mind, man. So I remember when I was a tutor at this college. When I was in grad school, I was a tutor for this EOP program. And this program was for incoming freshmen who came from either disadvantaged backgrounds or they didn't have, you know, you know, subsequent financial support, things of that nature, and predominantly, of course, they're blacks and Hispanic. And they pick tutors to be mentors to the incoming freshmen. So you'll go through this program. And these kids they choose, once they enter the program, they're not the first, they're not the horse you would bet on when it comes to saying, okay, well, this kid will get his bachelor's, or this kid is going to graduate and get a 4-year degree. This college was SUNY Cortland College. Excuse me. And they picked 4 mentors, and I was one of the mentors that they picked. And you pretty much, I had just graduated from UAlbany, and they picked guys who basically pick people in general. I mean, at first he didn't even the one guy didn't even really want to pick me for some reason, even though I was the only member of the 4 chosen who was in grad school. So it's like, it must have been something personal. But anyways, I ended up being on the one of the mentors, and so you stayed with the kids, and we took them out to different events, like on 4th of July. This was their first time away from home, so we were pretty much with them to support them. And one of the kids, man, he was this African guy. He came straight over from Africa, and we were having a discussion one time, and he wanted me to hang around them more, but I was a bit older, so I pretty much hung around them when I could, but other times I was in my room. And but yeah, he said one time we had some of that type of discussion, and he was like, "You're not African," and all this and that. And at the time, I was in my every black comes from Africa state of mind back then, and I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm African," which I know now, of course I'm not, but he was like, "Yeah, you're not African," and then his one of our mentors was an African too. So he said, "Yeah, yes, he is." And he was like, "Nah, I'm just playing with him. I just say that because oftentimes they say that they're not African." But he said, "Well, the difference between me and you is that I can survive in your hood, but you can't survive in my hood." Meaning, so this is what he said to me: "I can survive in your hood, but you can't survive in my hood. Like Africa's, so tough, and it's so raw there, and because of the poverty, the gang violence and the violence over there. Pretty much, if he survived that, then he could survive anything in America. So the gangs over in America aren't shit to him because he comes from Africa. So pretty much, he's saying anybody who can survive in Africa can survive the gang violence or the homicide rates in America, or the aggression in America." And here's the thing, man. That's why I wanted to make this video. That crossed my mind, and I came to the conclusion after thinking about that, because sometimes I'll be, you'll be walking around and you'll be thinking about things that happened, years before, and and sometimes it'll change your perspective. The perspective you'll have now may not be the same perspective you had back then. But yeah, here's the thing, man. It just popped into my mind. A lot of foreign blacks who come over here, they're lied to, man, and they have a big misconception. And a lot of these foreigners, they don't make it over here, man. Um, like I'm talking about a lot of the Jamaicans that come over here, the blacks from the islands. Um, and I touched on this in some of my previous videos, but a lot of the blacks from Africa, they're told certain things about quote unquote African Americans or blacks who are from here, and blacks from all over the diaspora, even the blacks who are from England and other parts of the world, who the ones who do actually make it to America. A lot of the ones who do make it to America weren't the poorest in their country, because how could you be the poorest over there and make it to America? So a lot of times they're exaggerating anyway. They weren't a part of that group who really struggled, because if you're a part of Ethiopia, if you were an African who lived in Ethiopia and you endured the poorest conditions of Ethiopia, the chances of you getting a chance to make it to America is slim to none. Where are you going to get the resources? Where are you going to get the money? So I mean, part of what he was, I know part of it, when he was young, he was just bullshitting. But a lot of blacks do come over here with misconceptions. A lot of blacks from other countries, other continents like Africa, they're coming from another continent, or if they come from the continent of Europe, or if they come from, some of these countries like Jamaica and things of that nature, they do come over here with that mentality like, my hood or my ghetto is tougher than any American ghetto, and we don't know what poverty really is. They do. And here's the thing, man. I mean, I've been to foreign countries. I was in the Navy. I've been to a lot of countries, and a lot of countries outside of the U.S. are very poor. Went to Turkey, and those guys will run up to you for nickels, dimes, anything they can get. I mean, as soon as we got off the tour bus, when I was on the USS Roosevelt, we pulled into port, and as soon as we got off the tour bus, um, once we had, of course, after we had died, those kids will just run up to you, and some of the kids are homeless. Excuse me. I've been to Tijuana, and the kids are very poor. And there are third world countries and third world countries that, where the whole country, they pretty much don't have much of anything. You may have to walk miles just to get to a well. You may have to go without food. I think in Ethiopia, I read this Google. I did some research, and I found out that a lot of the people in that country live off of less than $1 a day. But all of that does not mean that you can come to places like Compton, the Bronx, and not get killed. I repeat, just because you were poor in Africa or South America, doesn't mean you can't come to the U.S. and not get killed. We have some of the most violent areas in the world. They showed this one documentary in New York City before they cleaned New York City up, and you have people dying every hour, bro. I mean, the violence over here is very, very serious. So just because you think that you come from Africa where there's hostility in certain villages and things of that nature, just because you're very poor doesn't mean you can come over here and just run things. There's a lot of foreigners that come over here and get killed, all right, because of these misconceptions. I think Diallo or one African, I think in the year 2000 in New York City, he got a nightstick shoved up his ass. A lot of them think that blacks over here are just crazy for no reason. There's no such thing as police brutality. There's no such thing as poverty, thinking that when they come over here, they're going to just get rich and all that stuff. No, man. I mean, there's over 2 million immigrants who live in the U.S. under slave-like conditions. And there's different types of America. There's black America, and there's this one female was talking talking about that she was an Asian female from China, and she was talking about where on average America has more than other countries. But like I broke down and told her, there's a black America, there's a white America, there's a Mexican America, there's a Puerto Rican America. It's very fragmented, man. It's not like the wealth here is evenly spread out amongst everybody. I mean, you have some inner cities in the U.S. that look very close to some of these third world countries. And even though on average the third world countries are poorer because the whole country is struggling, that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of violence in the U.S. and there's not poverty in the U.S. So even if I have $2 in the U.S. and you have $1 over in some country in Africa, Ethiopia, doesn't mean that I'm not poor. You're just poorer. I repeat that. Just because you may be running around with no shoes. I have shoes, but I'm homeless. That doesn't mean I'm not poor. It doesn't mean that I'm poor because I just chose to be. A lot of times they'll come from these other countries. Blacks will come from these other countries thinking that, oh, if a black is poor over here, he must just want to be poor. And it's not that type of thing, man. I mean, there's generational poverty in this country, just like there's generational wealth in this country. I mean, and people don't really talk about that. But if your great grandma was a crackhead and your grandma's a crackhead and your mom's a crackhead, chances are you're gonna be a crackhead. I mean, that's usually how it works. You don't have a foundation that's gonna pretty much provide you with a platform that's gonna allow you to catapult yourself into the millionaire club over here. This is a very capitalistic society over here, and it takes money to make money. And a lot of these, blacks from other countries, some understand, but a lot don't. And when he said that, in my mind, I was kind of stunned because the first time I've ever interacted with African, I said this in some of my other, I had a video called Africans versus African Americans versus the African diaspora, when I was talking about what some of the trials and tribulations that a guy like myself, what blacks have to go through when we talk to other Africans and other blacks who come over here thinking they know better than the quote unquote African Americans who've been here, and thinking that we're just in this position because we're stupid or we're not as smart, or and we don't really know poverty because only poverty exists in Africa and Jamaica, and that's just bullshit. And I was at this one debate, not a debate, but Cornel West was speaking at the University at Albany before I graduated from there. He was like, this lady stood up in the crowd and said, like, the poverty in the South is worse than the poverty in the North. And Cornel West says that we should not discriminate. Poor people should not discriminate against each other. And he's right, man. Like I said, if I have $2 and you have $1, we should be pulling together. I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm rich and that I don't know poverty because I don't have $1. It just means that I'm poor and you're poorer because of your country, your whole country. The GPD is low. So of course the poverty is going to be a bit lower. But for those who think that because there's none, and don't get me wrong, there's carnage and things that are going on in Africa where kids are shooting kids and things of that nature, and they have the wars between, like I was watching this video between the Hutus and the Tutsis, the different tribes, because you have once England and Germany and all those countries left after they colonized Africa and divided it up, now they can just rule through imperialism, so they can rule now without even having to physically be there. So people are thinking that the blacks ran out the British, but actually they just left because they left and took all the resources with them. I.e., why Africa is one of the most They're one of the only continents that can fully self-sustain itself without the help of anyone else. But they have the poorest, they have the highest poverty rates in the country. I think on average, 60% of the continent is below the poverty level, i.e., mostly black people. However, that does not mean that you can't come to the U.S. and not get your head blown off. You can still get your motherfucking head blown off in the U.S. A lot of the blacks in the U.S. aren't batting 1,000 either, man. There's a lot of us that are homeless. There's a lot of us that are one payment away from being evicted, and there's a lot of the stress levels are very high. It's like I was watching this documentary about I think this Crip in the '90s, Monster Cody, they used to call him, and this guy was just he stomped this guy into a coma. I mean, he was a part of that violence over there. And I was watching this documentary. They said that in the '90s in LA, I guess when that crack was running rampant, people who died from drug violence or homicides, that rate had surpassed the number one cause of death in LA was car accidents, and the murder rate surpassed that. I repeat, the murder rate surpassed car accidents. That cripping blood violence in the late '80s and early '90s was total carnage. I mean, that just tore apart, the city, man. And to think that and guys like Monster Cody were, you had these head Crip guys and Bloods who were part of that, man. And you had people getting shot who weren't even in gangs. And so you telling me that because you were in Africa and you were poor, now that you come over here, you can beat guys like Monster Cody and Tookie Williams, another leader of the Crips, and Clarence Preacher Heatley in New York. You're gonna, beat these guys because you're from Africa? Nah, man, you can definitely. There's plenty of Africans that get killed in the United States, man. Plenty of Jamaicans that get shot in the U.S. and get killed, every day. So don't think for a second that because you didn't have a pair of socks, in Barbados, that means you can come over here and then run the streets or run the drug trade. That Shatas movie is just a movie. And you do have some Haitians and little Haiti in Miami who made a name for themselves, but for the most part, all your, like I said, the Crips and the Bloods, they ran the streets in terms of the drug trade and things like that for many years. A lot of the blacks who were already here had a larger hand in the drug trade than foreign blacks. So just because you come from quote unquote, because not all the blacks coming from Africa are the poorest blacks from Africa. Like I said, in order to make it over here, you had to have some money anyway. And guys said, well, you can just save up. I mean, that's bullshit. I mean, I can save up all I want. I'm going to need a lot. I'm going to need a lot of money to make it to Africa. Okay, and on average, my dollar is more than the dollars in your country, so it's going to be even harder for you to make it over here because you guys get paid even a smaller wage. So a lot of the blacks over here from Africa aren't even from those poorest conditions, because the blacks who are from the poorest conditions of Africa will never see Europe and America. Those are the guys who get in the boats and try to make it in the rowboats all the way to Europe, and then end up getting either drowned or shot or something even worse. Excuse my break. I do say break. That's that do say that. What's called deuces or douce. That Sean Carter cognac. Some good shit. Now y'all see me in each video having a little sip. Not an alcoholic though. But Most videos I'm not having a sip. But yeah, man. So I just want to touch base on that because that's a serious. That really agitates me when a so-called African or person from Uganda, a person from the African continent, from Uganda or from Ethiopia or from whatever country, Niger, whatever the country they come from over here. Once they come over here, they really aggravate me, and probably not just me, but a lot of blacks who are foreign, who are from here, from the U.S., United States of America, and a lot of Jamaicans as well. A lot of these foreign blacks from the diaspora. I mean, their attitudes is, for the most part, I met some cool Africans and some cool islanders, but for the most part, their attitudes are very shitty and very dismissive in terms of what blacks Americans have to go through over here, but they expect you to have sympathy for their plight, as if blacks don't really have a plight over here. Just like Malcolm X said, I mean, back in the '60s, before my time, but based on my research and watching the videos, he was saying, blacks are people who point to the injustice in Africa, but don't point to the injustice against blacks in America. It's very hypocritical, and he's correct, man. He's correct because we have just as much violence over here, if not more. And then certain news mediums will try to drive a wedge and make it seem like, oh, you should be so happy to be in the U.S. Be happy that you're not in Africa. I mean, and truth be told, I mean, don't get me wrong. I do have a job and I do feel fortunate. But it's blacks in this country who are living close to standards over in Africa, which they will never show you. Blacks who live, young black kids living under bridges, living in tents. So at the same time, it's just like they just, and news media, of course, they're gonna make it seem like their country is the best country in the world. But again, it's a black America, there's a white America, there's a Puerto Rican America. There's Australian, there's an Italian America, there's an Irish America. There's a lot of different Americas, man, and it's sanctioned off. It's not like one big beautiful family. Yeah, there is wealth here, but that wealth belongs to a few. Just like in Jamaica, where wealth is pretty much in the hands of the few. I think the Queen of England pretty much runs most of the quote-unquote Caribbean islands, just like in Africa, any African country, Ghana or Libya, the wealth is in the hands of the few. And I think NATO controls a lot of the Africa. So again, I mean, the way things run in Africa is very similar to the way things run in Jamaica and the U.S. So here's the thing. I mean, regardless if you're copper colored with dark complected skin, regardless of where you live in the world, you're pretty much getting the short end of the stick. So, blacks coming over here talking about, oh yeah, well, you guys don't know poverty, you don't know violence. If I survived in Africa, I can survive over here. Okay, I hear your argument, fair enough, but don't be surprised if you think that you can run in these streets because you are from Africa. Don't be surprised if you don't make it or get a bullet in your ass. Because I mean, it doesn't work like that, man. There's violence all over the country, all over the world, and there is a problem with high unemployment in America, high poverty levels, and a lot of blacks are homeless. You're gonna tell a homeless black that he should be lucky that he's in America. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like the type of thing where you have to think about stuff before you actually say it and try to attack people from one of those uppity type of well, I'm from another country, so I know. You just know what you heard. You haven't lived over here. You know what I'm saying? You just know what you heard. You haven't lived over here. You haven't seen the police brutality over here. Not saying that all police are bad, but you haven't gone through anything over here. Cause so we don't know anything about Africa, and you guys know even less when you come over here. You guys don't know anything about America. Yeah, I had one African chick. 'Cause I didn't really start, like I said, interacting with Africans until I went to Stony Brook University. And before then, I had never really met an African because no Africans were in Rochester, New York. Very few during the time when I was raised in the inner city. They weren't in my neighborhood. Some of them may have been in the suburbs, but they weren't in the inner city. And so I didn't really interact with them until Jesus, till I was about 24, 25, when I actually started being roommates with Africans and actually speaking with them and hearing the words coming out of their mouths. Of around, I say 2004, 2005, I started interacting with Africans very heavily. And man, I was surprised to hear some of the words coming out of their mouth in terms of their insensitivity toward the plight of blacks, in the inner cities, or blacks in America. And these are some of the Africans I were talking to. These were blacks who were just came over here from Africa. Because Stony Brook is considered a world university, where you'll have a lot of a big percentage of the college population is from other places. So, when I interacted with these guys, and I had sympathy for their plight, and then to hear how they felt about the African American plight, man, I was just blown away. Like, whoa, this is some real disrespect. And and then after I went to Stony Brook, the same. I met a few at Albany, and a few were cool, and I met some more in Stony Brook. So pretty much during my college years, I had a lot of interactions with Africans, real Africans who had just come over here, man. And then some were cool. Some put me on to music that I wasn't aware of, like Peter Tosh and Bob Marley, and real cool brother that I worked with at UAlbany. He was from Africa, and he let me know about Peter Tosh, and because of him, I became more of a Bob Marley fan, because I had heard of the name, but didn't really know the music. And he used to work with me in the library, and he used to play a lot of music from Peter Tosh and Bob Marley. But then after I went to UAlbany, I think I went from Stony Brook to UAlbany and then to Cortland College. That's when I interacted with Africans even more, because now it's like a lot of the universities and schools in the States, some of the African population, or the foreigners, are starting to become a larger percentage than the actual blacks and Hispanics who are from America. Like especially if you look at the larger universities, a lot of the kids that are coming over here who are actually going to college, the percentage of foreigners in a lot of these colleges, in some ways, outnumber the number of blacks and Hispanics who are from the U.S., which is scary. And they're getting some of these jobs at Wells Fargo and some of the big banks. Some of the jobs I wouldn't mind having. But yeah, I just want to touch base on that, man. Didn't want to go this long with the video, but let me know what you think about especially if you're a Black American or African American who's been in this country for generations, your interactions with Africans, or Africans from the continent of Africa who are from Ghana, countries like Ghana or Mali, or whatever country they are from in that continent. Let me know, what do you think in terms of, have you ever talked to an African one-on-one? And what about the blacks in the islands? How do you think that, what do you think? Have you ever had one disrespect you, or have an African, pretty much, you listen to them speak and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe you're so disrespectful in terms of, what's going on in the Black community. I mean, because just let me know what you think, because growing up, it was funny because, I grew up off of the KRS-One self-destruction Black hip. When I caught on to hip hop, that's when the quote unquote African medallions and the African movement was in hip hop, which I think was, now I look back on it, I think it was a bunch of crap. But that self-destruction, get it for self-destruction. And back then, all blacks were believed to be from Africa, and I came up in that era, and I looked at all blacks as being Africans, and I found out later we're not all from the same continent, even though we share some of the same complexion. But I mean, I didn't find that out until after I had spoke with a lot of Africans and people from the islands and things of that nature. But I mean, to sit there and actually hear, growing up in that self-destruction, the KRS-One and the brand Nubian era, because I was a big, hip hop fan back then when I was a kid, and listening to brand Nubian and Sadat X and KRS-One, and hearing all the pro-black talk, and then actually speaking to the Africans after that, just blew my mind, man. But let me know what you think. Make sure to like and subscribe. For everyone who's been commenting on my videos, I thank you so much for your support, for your comments, and for your different perspectives, and you trolls who continue to come to my videos. If you have no page and you leave a negative comment, I will erase your negative, weak comment. Now, I don't mind negative comments, but have a page so I can know you're authentic. All right, but everyone's free to make their own comment. And if you are offended by this, I'm glad. And it's the author, man. You guys take care out there. All right. All right.